Hello. Welcome to the Godly Playroom at First United Church here in the county in the city of Wetaskiwin. My name is Ruth Lummox, and it is my privilege to be able to share stories in this room. And it's also exciting to see some of you back upstairs in worship, and I look forward to welcoming you into this space, or having Sherry or Jackie or someone else welcome you as we share stories. But today, let's just settle into this space. I wonder what you need to be ready. You'll know. Sometimes people just need to set something aside, or to turn off their phone or TV or whatever else might be going on in background noise. You might want to have a candle ready, so that you can be connected in that way, even though we're together over the internet. You might need to take a deep breath and settle yourself into this time and place together. You might want to have something ready for your art response. Some materials to work with to cut and paste or draw or color or paint or write or draw. Anything that lets you engage with the story with your whole self and not just your eyes and your thoughts. You might need to take another deep breath. You might want to have something for your feast. A glass of water, a cup of coffee or tea, maybe something to nibble on. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Just something that we share together in a meal. This last week we celebrated worldwide communion, and so our feast was upstairs, and it was wonderful to see so many people here again. And maybe another deep breath. We are in that final week of creation season, the time of the color orange. We're also getting ready to celebrate Thanksgiving. I wonder what you're thankful for about creation. Know that you can pause the video anytime you need to help yourself get more ready. Or if you only have so much time, sometimes we can't just engage fully. I trust that you will know what you need to do. Today is a big story, the story of the great family. But before we get into that, let's light our candle. We remember that once there was someone who said such amazing things and did such wonderful things that people began to follow him. And the more they followed him, the more they wondered who he was. And so one time, they just had to ask, "Who are you?" And one time, when they asked him that question, he said, "I am the light." I'm going to put this light on the shelf here where you can see it and we can still worship together, but it won't be in the way as I tell this story. You do what you need to be ready, and I'll see you back here in a few moments. Welcome back. This is the desert box. It isn't all of the desert. Obviously, we couldn't fit all of the desert into our room and still have room for all the other stories. But so many important things happen in the desert that we need a bit of it here to help us with our stories. Desert is a dangerous place. When the wind blows, the sand changes shape, and it's easy to lose your way. There is very little that grows in the desert. And without food, People die. There is very little water in the desert. And without water, everything dies. It gets very hot during the day, and at night it gets very cold. And when the wind blows, the sand stings your skin. People wear extra clothing just to protect themselves from the sun and the sand. The desert is a dangerous place. People don't go into the desert unless they have to. After the flood, the creatures spread out to the four directions of the earth to fill it up with life again. At first, they settled along the rivers. But then they built towns and villages and eventually cities. The greatest and most ancient of these cities was called Ur. The people who lived in Ur believed that there was a God for everything. There was a God for every rock and tree and flower. There was a God for the sky and the clouds and the rain and the earth. The world was alive with gods. But there was one family who believed that all of God was everywhere. Avram and Sarai were part of that family. They did not know this, but that is what they believed. And so when the time came to move to a new place, they wondered if God would be there, as much as they wondered what it would like to be in that new place. But they set out with many helpers, animals, sheep and donkeys. The old people and the children went too. At night, they camped in their tents. And during the day, they followed the great river Euphrates. It helped show them the way and gave them water to drink. It was a long way. But eventually, they began to meet people coming the other way from Haran, and they knew they were getting close. And then they were there. Sometimes at night, Avram would go out to the edge of the city and look out across the desert. And God would come so close to Avram, and Avram would come so close to God, that he knew what God wanted them to do. God wanted Avram and Sarai to move to another new place. And so they did. They set out west from Haran into the desert with their many animals and helpers and tents. But this time, there was no river to show them the way or to give them water to drink. They came to a place called Shechem. And Avram climbed a hill there and prayed to God. And God was there. And so Avram built an altar to mark that place. And they continued on their way. They came close to a place called Bethel. And Avram prayed to God there. And God was there. And so Avram built an altar there to mark that place. And then they continued towards Hebron. And they pitched their tents under the oaks of Mamre. They had discovered that God was there and there and there, not just here, but all of God was everywhere. One night, God called Avram out into the desert. And God came so close to Avram, and Avram came so close to God, that he knew what God was saying. God told Avram that he and Sarai would become the parents of a great family that would number more than the stars in the sky or the grains of sand in the desert. And Avram laughed. God's promise sounded impossible. He and Sarai were too old and they had no children. But God said to change their name anyways. And so Avram became Abraham, the father of many, and Sarai became Sarah, the mother of many. One day, strangers came out of the desert, and Abraham went and welcomed them to his tent. And Sarah went and mixed 3 measures of flour, which is quite a lot, and she gave them milk and meat to drink, or milk and water to drink, and bread and meat to eat, as was their custom. And when they had eaten everything that they wanted, they said that in about a year's time, Sarah would have a child. And Sarah, who is standing by the door of the tent, laughed because she was far too old to be starting a family, and Abraham also is very old. The strangers went on their way. And you know what happened? In about a year's time, Sarah gave birth to a baby boy. And she and Abraham laughed again. And they called the child Laughter, which in their language is Isaac. Isaac grew to be a young man, and by then Sarah was old and very weary, and she died and was buried under the oaks of Mamre. Abraham was very sad. He missed Sarah so much. But there was one more thing he had to do. He sent his most trusted helper back to Haran, to the land of his people, to find a wife for Isaac. One night the helper stopped at a well, and there was a young woman named Rebekah. And she gave him some water to drink, and then she helped him water his animals. And then she invited him back to meet her family. She was as courageous as she was kind. The helper told Rebekah and her family all about Isaac and Abraham and Sarah and the great family. And Rebekah decided that she wanted to become a part of that great family. And so they set out. Past Shechem, past Bethel. And while they were still at a distance, Isaac saw them coming, and he went out to meet them. And Isaac and Rebekah were married. Abraham was now very old and full of years, and he died. And they buried him with Sarah in the cave under the oaks. And Isaac and Rebekah had children. And their children had children. The great family was growing. Those children had children, and this went on for generations until your grandparents had children. And then your parents had children. And now we are all a part of this great family that is more than the stars in the sky or the grains of sand in the desert. I wonder what part of this story you liked best. I wonder what part of this story is the most important part. I wonder if there's any part of this story we could leave out and still have all the story that we need. I wonder where you are in this story. Or what part of this story is especially for you today. You can pause the video if you'd like to do some more wondering. I'm going to begin putting the story away, And you might also want to do some thinking about what you would like to do in response to this story. And then Rebecca and Isaac. Laughter. Bethel, the altar that marks that place. The altar at Shechem. Abraham and Sarah, the father and mother of many. Haran and that great river Euphrates. I wonder if you remember the name of this river. It starts with a T. Sounds like an animal, kind of. The Tigris. Oh, and the desert. Well, I'm going to move this out of the way so I have a little more room to do my response. And you're welcome to join us whenever you're ready. Welcome back. I wonder what you found to work with. I was thinking about all the sand in this story, and so I found some containers with some colored sand. You can make your own colored sand or colored rice pretty easily. You just need a baggie, a little bit of sand and some food coloring or water-soluble paint if you want. And you just put a little bit of the coloring in the bag with the sand, seal it up, squish it around, and let it dry. So I have a few different colors here. And I was thinking about the great family. So there are those rivers. That little bit of blue sand. And the rivers, they don't talk about the rivers as being part of the family, but I think because I'm in creation season and been thinking about some of the indigenous teachings, they tend to think of the birds and the rocks and trees all as part of that great family too. We tend to just think about people or the ones that we're actually related to, but there are many people in God's family. So think about those folks. And we remember in the story that the water helped show the people the way to go and gave them water to drink, right? And water is about life and everything that we need to survive. We can't survive without water. So I wonder who are some of the people in your life, or places maybe, who've helped show you the way. The way to live or to be better at a sport. Maybe it's a coach or a music teacher or a teacher at school or a godly play leader or a youth group leader, maybe even your minister or your parents. All kinds of different people and all kinds of different places in the world that help sustain us, right? That give us life, to show us the way. Sometimes Jesus talked about himself as the way, truth, and life. One of the other things about family, of course, is where we gather, right? And that's been something we've missed so much in the last little while, is a place to gather safely. We think about the big cities where people gather, the smaller communities. And maybe like me, you've been thinking about the people that are displaced because of some of the weather that's been happening along the East Coast or to the south of us. And those people who maybe only get to live in a very precarious place because they've seen their home washed away or blown away. So I think about those people that are living in tents and how hard that must be, especially when you're used to living in a city or a home, and to see that all just disappear. And Avram and Sarai set out on that long journey. They were lucky they didn't have to go by themselves. There were people along the way. Both on that journey from Ur to Haran. And from Haran into the wilderness with no water to guide them or show them the way, till they found the oak trees at Mamre near Hebron. And I wonder who some of the people have been that have accompanied you through all those ups and downs and different journeys. Sometimes it's the people that walk us to and from school. Maybe somebody with whom we carpool to get to and from work. Maybe it's the people that look after us after those activities. Grandparents or day home workers or childcare providers, a nanny even. So many people that we meet along life's journey. And then, of course, there were the places that they stopped and prayed to God. You think if it was me, I was probably praying all the way, not just in some places. There's probably a bit here too, right? Trying to do this without flinging sand everywhere is a little tricky. I wonder where you like to pray to God. Or how you know when God comes so close to you that you can come so close to God. There's something about doing that for me out under the stars. And of course that's a part of this story too, right? The members of the family that number more than the grains of sand in the desert or stars in the sky. I haven't always been able to see the stars lately. It's been some pretty foggy mornings. And pretty soon we'll be celebrating Thanksgiving, which is often another time where we get together with family and we're reminded how precious those relationships are. Sometimes they are people that we live with or are related to directly, and other times they are people that we choose to be with or who have chosen to be with us. Our church family sometimes, or the neighbors up and down our street or back lane, farming community. However you celebrate this Thanksgiving, I hope you know yourself part of that great family that numbers more than the stars in the sky or the grains of sand in the desert. I'm going to clean up my mess, and I'll join you back here in a moment for prayers and feast. Welcome back. Let's just take a moment and offer our thanks. I often think about times in our church family when we have gathered for a meal, or as our family gathers for a meal, and we usually sing our grace, and we haven't done that one for a while. So I'm going to sing, "For all your goodness, God, we give you thanks. Thanks for the food we eat and for the friends we meet. For each new day we greet, we give you thanks." And this is a fun grace because you can actually sing it as a round if you've got some people that are pretty good at singing in your household, or you could speak it as a round and try to get into that rhythm so that each person starts and it moves around that way. Here's what it sounds like. I'll sing it through once and then you're welcome to join me. Or if you don't feel like singing, by all means, you can pause the video, say your own prayers, and then come on back for feast. For all your goodness, God, we give you thanks. Thanks for the food we eat and for the friends we meet. For each new day we greet, we give you thanks. Here we go, together. For all your goodness, God, we give you thanks. Thanks for the food we eat and for the friends we meet. For each new day we greet, we give you thanks. Amen. So I wonder what you've got. After all that desert walking, I'm ready for some water. And my hands are just a little bit dusty from being in the desert. I can't quite imagine what it would be like to live in the desert all the time and not have a lot of water, which means you wouldn't wash really often. And I know just how kind of gritty and grimy sometimes my skin gets when I go for a walk in the summer and you're a little bit sweaty and the dust clings to your skin. Or you go to the beach and the sand gets everywhere. I am very glad that I have access to water. Although I know there are some places in the world right now that would rather see a little bit less ocean water and storm water. We don't always get to pick and choose, unfortunately. And I have a little bit of a snack. Little granola bars here. It was quite fun to have people stay after church last week, and they'll get to do that again tomorrow. And just enjoy being together. The conversation and the energy. Having cake doesn't hurt. No, maybe a little. But just good to be together as family. I wonder how you're celebrating Thanksgiving. Will you be cooking something, or maybe going to someone else's to eat? Do you have lots of people over? Just a few people? Our family's a turkey and a ham kind of family. We can't always decide which one we'd rather. But there's a special kind of potatoes that they like to have. I wonder what kind of traditions or special things you like to have as part of your Thanksgiving or your great family celebrations. I think that's all I'm going to eat for today, knowing that we're going to be eating lots more this weekend. So it's time to get ready to say goodbye. You might get your candle ready. And notice how the light is just in this one place and time, but when we change the light, it spreads out. Not quite yet. Not yet either. There. And it will fill this room and find its way to wherever you are. And even when we can't see it anymore, we know the light is still there. And so until we meet again, God bless. Be well and look after one another.